for 8 years. She has a regular column in the National Catholic Register. She has received 3 honorary doctorates and several other awards for scholarship and service. She has appeared on the Geraldo Show, and you survived. Okay. He survived. Fox Morning News, CNN International, CNN Newsroom, Al Jazeera, and he has done many shows for various series on EWTN. More than 2 million copies of her talk, Contraception, Why Not?, have been distributed. By the way, she has a booth out in the atrium there. You can go and take a look at what she has available, which is exactly what she says at the end of this introduction. So, with no further ado, Professor Janet Smith.
Thank you.
I want you all to know I have my lucky socks on today, my Lady of Guadalupe socks. The day should go well, I hope. Thank you very much, Monica, for that introduction. And I want you to know I do have free copies of my CD out at the desk. They're not marked free, I was just about to do that. But the books are not free, but the CDs are. Right? And I also have a website, janetsmith.org. And all my talks should be there. At least this one is, and a few others. They'll all eventually be there. And they're all for free. So you can download all my talks from my website for free and distribute them any way you like. If you want to make CDs, I don't know who uses those anymore. At any rate, it is really good to be here. In fact, I find it consoling to be with this company. In a world of fake news, it's a true gift to be with those who are as real as people can be. By that I mean that you've managed to penetrate past the lies and deceptions that now govern the thought of our culture and too many in the church as well. You live in reality. You know the truth and you act upon it, often to a great cost to yourselves. I admire you and I applaud you, and actually I'm so honored to be with you today. I'm very humbled to be here speaking to this assembly. Nearly all of you have made much more courageous choices than I have. I've never been arrested for any pro-life activities, and that actually makes me nervous. For I wonder if when I arrive at the pearly gates, I'll be able to defend that gap in my record. As I often tell Monica, my dear friend, when I make my case before St. Peter, I'm going to lean a lot on my friendship with her to bolster my chances of getting in. I'm going to say, I'm Monica Miller's friend. She would be unhappy if I weren't in heaven with her, so please let me in. I think that's my best ticket to getting in. What I hope to do today is simply to fortify you in your excellent choices, to help you give philosophical defenses for actions you know in your bones and in your heart are right. I know that you have prayed carefully for discernment on what you should do, and that is the best guide for action. But sometimes other people need more than your assurances that bone-deep convictions and fervent prayer have led you to do what you do. Catholics are by nature very law-abiding. Most moral people are, in fact, tremendously law-abiding. Rightly, we respect the law as essential to civic order and recognize that maintaining civic order is essential to human flourishing. We are even willing to endure severe restrictions on our free choices when we believe the greater or common good requires it. There is no better example at the moment than the amazing compliance with the mandate to wear masks, to the point where some people wear them when alone in their own cars or in the wilderness with no one else around. In fact, I conjecture that most pro-lifers are in the category of rather extreme law-abiding folks. Probably few of us cheat on our taxes, park in handicapped spaces, or drive more than 5 miles over the speed limit, with the exception of my good friend Monica. I drove down with yesterday. It's great. I had black hair yesterday. Anyway, even when we feel justified in doing such things, we don't do them because we abide the law. People do seem to take the law as the criterion for determining what actions we should or should not perform. In fact, few doctors would perform abortions if they were illegal. not just because they fear legal consequences, but also because they take the law as the criteria for what is acceptable for them to do. Conversely, some people who are opposed to some behavior will nonetheless engage in it if the law allows it. For instance, many people will not oppose funding for Planned Parenthood because abortion is legal. They do not want to impose their morality on others by withholding funds for abortion. Still, most people recognize that many actions should not be done even if they were legal, such as murder and theft. Whether or not these actions are against the law, few people will engage in them. But we also know that sometimes the law needs to be broken. If we are driving a person bleeding to death to the hospital, we know we are justified in going over the speed limit. We would borrow a boat from someone else's property to save a drowning person. We would rush into a burning building with no trespassing signs to rescue a person asleep in the building. The defense for violating the law in these instances is called the principle of necessity. Law exists to protect human goods, and in some circumstances, when human life, for instance, is in immediate danger, we believe we have the right and even duty to break the law. A very sticky question arises, the one we face, when we believe that the law permits something horrible and intrinsically evil and explicitly prevents us from trying to stop that horrible and intrinsic evil from being done. It's not such a sticky question if it's a hypothetical question. When it is a question that puts no demands on us, most people believe they would have engaged in illegal activities to resist the Nazi killing of the Jews, or would have helped slaves escape from slavery. The term virtue signaling works well to describe our confident statements that we would have gone to great risks, including imprisonment and death, to rescue Jews or slaves. We are able to do that since that demand has not been made upon us. But seeing the low extent of activism most of us are willing to engage in to stop abortion, even by those who are extremely adamantly opposed to it, suggests that there are few who are so committed to fighting injustice as to be willing to face the consequences of breaking the law. Those of you who have such strong convictions that enable you to do that are a mystery to others. Those of us who wish we could be as self-sacrificing and brave as you are can't imagine doing what you do. You are also a mystery to those who can't imagine that anyone acts for self-sacrificing motives. And here I'm talking about such groups as Planned Parenthood. Over a year ago, I was deposed in one of the lawsuits regarding David DeLine's expose of Planned Parenthood and its practice of marketing the body parts of unborn babies. A smile for my friend Mike. I'm going to look like I'm talking to the crowd. Thank you, Mike. All right, I used to have a thing at the bottom of my introduction, no pictures while I'm talking, because pictures while you're talking are a lot like pictures while you're eating. Your face does really weird things. My face does weird things even just sitting still. So anyway, so Planned Parenthood, I gave this deposition for a trial, where Planned Parenthood was, I think, suing David DeLine for having caused them to lose income. They were trying to establish that David was running a criminal enterprise designed to defraud Planned Parenthood. I was asked to testify that David had acted from moral concerns more than from any animus against Planned Parenthood. David had called me just prior to beginning his project, precisely because he wanted to establish that what he was doing was in accord with Catholic moral teaching. As you know, his work required all sorts of duplicity, founding an organization with a misleading name, deceiving organizers of conferences about his true purpose of being there, using false identities, surreptitiously recording conversations, and making statements that were not straightforwardly true. David came to me at the recommendation of a friend to determine the morality of his actions, knowing that I can justify such actions. I'm going to be the patron saint, if I be a saint, of rationalizations anyway. good excuses for bad actions. I have taught ethics and morality for decades, and find it fascinating to help people see that they already know a great deal about what is right and wrong, though they don't always know how to defend their beliefs. David had very good moral instincts, and basically already told myself. Mostly, I just upgraded the technical moral vocabulary he could use to defend his position. One reason David came to me was that I had defended the view that there are occasions where it is moral to make false statements. This is not a popular position in Catholic circles, although there is more diversity on the morality of telling falsehoods than many think. For maybe a little interesting detour here. Many think the church teaches that lying is always wrong, and there is a lot of evidence to support that claim. Certainly, the revered angelic doctor, Thomas Aquinas, taught all attempts to deceive others, in word or deed, are immoral, to the point of arguing that jocose lies or falsehoods told in the service of making people laugh are always wrong. You can't even tell a joke that includes a falsehood, and most of them do, honestly. It would be a rather mirthless society if we followed Aquinas on this. And most of those who defend Aquinas make an exception for the jocose lies, for the joking lies. But they really can't, to be consistent with this theory. Aquinas held a strict position because he believed that all communication is meant to convey the truth about reality, and that it is a misuse of language to use it for other purposes, especially for conveying something opposite to the truth. You might make an analogy and say it's much like using sex to exploit someone rather to express a lifetime loving commitment open to children. Now, only Catholics will get that analogy. It's actually a legitimate one. John Paul II called contraceptive sex a lie, that your body says one thing, but you're saying something other by using contraception. But I digress. The definition of the purpose of language, to explain the wrongness of lying, would seem to settle the matter, except for the fact that the first edition of the 1992 edition of the Catechism says this. Listen carefully. To lie is to speak or act against the truth in order to lead into error someone who has the right to know the truth. So it involves speech and action against the truth with the purpose of leading into error. Here's the phrase: someone who has the right to know the truth. This definition clearly implies that not everyone has the right to know the truth in all matters, and thus that leading that person into error would sometimes be moral. So we have the Catechism in 1992 telling us that only not everyone has the right to know the truth in all instances. When I read that in 1992, I was euphoric. That was a definition of lying I could support. It left room for doing such things as saying to Nazis at the door who asked if I had any Jews in my attic. I could answer to them with complete confidence, I don't, right? Even if I did have Jews in my attic. Because I think we can make a case that they don't deserve to know the truth. I could tell a falsehood. Now, many moralists, maybe even most Catholic faithful moralists, deny that such is a moral thing to do. They say, as Aquinas did, no lies, never. And no deception, no false passports, no disguises to escape from tyrants, no consoling lies about pets going to heaven, absolutely no falsehoods ever, right? Not even to make a joke. And now, right here in the 1992 Catechism, it allows for deceiving those who do not deserve to know the truth. If I were able to do a cartwheel, I would have done a cartwheel. I would have done dozens of cartwheels. So, one problem is there was no justification given for that. It just said that. right? It just asserted it. No explanation about why this seems to be a departure from a previous tradition. It just said it. I tried to do that. I think I might have achieved, but some people, not many people do at this point, and I'm going a couple more tries at it. But I tried an essay to do that in an essay. I tried in an essay written in First Things quite a few years ago to do that. And my claim was that language serves more purposes than conveying the factual truth. Right? We have many reasons we use language: encouragement, honestly, sometimes deception. If someone comes to my office and says, and I'm very, very busy trying to meet a deadline. If it's a student that I really know's help and says to me, "Are you busy?" I might look up and say, "No, I'm not busy." When I'm incredibly busy, all right? I'm incredibly busy, go away. Instead, I say, "No, come on, sit down," right? Now, that's because I am, my phone's ringing into my ears. I have hearing aids that go straight to my ears. Isn't that great? In the middle of my own talk, I have to stop myself to think I know how to do it here. Let me see. I thought I did this right beforehand, but got distracted, of course. It's probably the first time you've seen this. If you come to another talk of mine, you might see it again. All right. So as I was saying, different lies, falsehoods we can tell. That language has many purposes. And I said I'm not going to go into this long discussion, but basically I'm saying that morality before the fall was very different from morality after the fall. Not that there would have needed been any morality before the fall. There was no disordered appetites, but there was no theft, no adultery, no murder, no lying before the fall. But after the fall, you are allowed to kill in self-defense, right? You are allowed to take things that belong to others if you have a real necessity for them. Right? So you're not allowed to hit someone before the fall. You can only hit people in self-defense after the fall. So I think language after the fall might have had more diverse functions than before the fall. At any rate, we're not here to discuss the justification, just to look at this phenomenon for a minute. Now, my euphoria about the Catechism in 1992 didn't last long, actually only 5 years. There was an updated version of the Catechism in 1997, and it changed the definition of lying. It changed it. It removed from the definition the key phrase or qualifier, someone who has the right to know the truth. It took that away. If I could have done backwards flip-flops, I would have done them, right? It's not good, right? This version said simply, to lie is to speak or act against the truth in order to lead someone into error. Nothing about right to know the truth. It implies everybody. You can never speak or act against the truth in order to lead into error. Now, error is an interesting word there. If I'm not allowing the Nazis to kill the Jews, am I leading them into error, or am I leading them into something that is good? But really, philosophically speaking, it seems that I first have to lead them into error before I lead them into good, and that's using an immoral means to a good end in the moral theology world. All right, so there was no more reference to someone who has the right to know the truth, and it implies all false signification, all lying is wrong. I don't know about you, but I found it quite surprising and even unsettling to learn that there were two different definitions of lying given in the Catechism. One that rules out all falsehoods and another that prevents some falsehoods to those who don't deserve to know the truth. It's even more surprising, I suppose, that there is no explanation given for the at least apparent irreconcilability of the definitions. Indeed, in a letter accompanying the publication of the second version, the claim was made that no substantive changes had been made in the second edition. There was nothing in the second edition that really contradicted anything in the first edition. And I'm saying, what about this section on lying? No explanation, no clarification. Now, honestly, I believe few people don't immediately know that it would be moral to tell a falsehood to Nazis trying to capture and kill Jews hiding in the attic. I don't think there are any people that immediately know that. Even those who think you shouldn't do it, shouldn't lie, they want to. They really want to. They would love to be given a reason to be allowed to lie to the Jews, right? And another example I would give you is a dementia patient. I took care of my mother for years, and every once in a while she would just get very morose and, "Where's Dad?" Well, Dad had died many years earlier. And every time you tell her if Dad died, when Mommy died 6 years earlier, she would grieve all over again. So instead you say, "He's at the Elks Club, he'll be home later tonight." And she was happy, right? Why would I tell her she died? Right? So the people who care for dementia patients have to tell falsehoods all the time unless they want to traumatize them over and over again. Now, we wouldn't have trouble destroying the vehicles in which the Nazis had come to cut off the Jews. We wouldn't have trouble uh, doing physical violence to them, maybe even killing them, as they attempt to drag the Jews away. So really, we can't tell them a falsehood. I have trouble with that. Nonetheless, many argue vigorously that it would be wrong to tell falsehoods to Nazis, because they believe lying is always wrong and that all falsehoods are lies. I think they go against their natural moral instincts because of a principle they have come to believe. That's admirable in a way, but problematic as well. Suppose the commandment, "Do not bear false witness," doesn't rule out all falsehoods. Suppose it's more narrowly prescribed to saying what is false is to condemn or deceive the innocent, right? Those who deserve to know the truth. Now, my friend Monica, I drove with 8.5 hours in a car yesterday. It's a challenge for both of us, probably more for her than me. But she's going to argue with me all the way back to Michigan about this. She's one who doesn't agree with me on this position. Now, Monica would say there are no Jews in my attics, but she would practice something called mental reservation, which means you withhold the phrase, "not as far as you're concerned," right? Which I think is, she knows what I think about that. But we'll argue all the way back to Michigan about this. But let me build on my argument a bit. Again, I think virtually everyone knows it would be moral to assume false identities or to trespass to prevent serious evils from being done. And this came up, of course, in the deposition I gave in a Planned Parenthood case against David DeLayden. I had a rather fascinating exchange with the lawyer who was deposing me in the David DeLayden case. She had trouble grasping that I had counseled him that it could be a moral action for him to break the law to expose the evils of Planned Parenthood. She couldn't seem to understand what could possibly justify breaking the law, particularly the act of assuming a false identity to get information from people. I knew it wouldn't be hard to provide her with analogous situations where, in fact, she would act upon the normal moral instinct that it is moral to use falsehoods and to break laws when great human goods are at stake. I told her there were many situations similar to David's that would justify behavior similar to his. In fact, as I gave the examples, she didn't refute or deny any of them. Yet every time I gave one, she would ask for another. The first is the typical Nazi one, in the Jews with a slight twist. I said if there were, say, a number of Jews that were on a train going to a concentration camp, and if I could acquire some false identification that I was a Nazi officer, and I could enter into the train yard and make a demand that the prisoners be released, I think that would be moral. If I were able to get false identification that I was the slave owner of a certain group of people, and I could present that identification to those who are shipping them somewhere to be sold and say, "No, these are mine, I want you to give them back to me," and then I liberate them, that would be a moral use of false identification. It could be multiplied infinitely, anywhere where there is some grave injustice being done to someone, for instance, sexual trafficking. If I knew that there were a number of children or women being sexually trafficked, and I could pose as someone who was going to buy them with a false identification of someone they've known in the past that has bought them, and I look enough like that person or can disguise myself enough to go and say, "I want to purchase this group of women and children," and then I liberate them, that would be a moral thing to do. This would be a patron saint of justification, rationalizations, okay? I could go on. And every time I gave one, she would ask for another one. She would say, "Give me another one. Give me another one." I kept doing it. I said, "Well, we could go all day. How many do you want to do this?" So to move now to Red Rose Rescue. While many people could see that the examples given above show there are many situations where we think deception and breaking the law would be justified, In itself, some think that isn't sufficient to justify Red Rose rescue. Of course, in a sense, that is true. It's always, in principle, something might be justified. Is it justified in practice? Is it justified in practice? The first objection, of course, is that the actions I describe above are performed for real, living human beings, whereas abortion simply removes tissue. You know the answers to that. Science, right? There are other objections of a like nature, that to have a baby or not is a woman's choice, and we can't interfere with that. Or that we are imposing our beliefs on others, and that is wrong. These are typical pro-abortion objections, and you all know how to answer them. If not, read one of the many books out there that do a great job. A more interesting question in respect to Red Rose Rescue is whether it is wise or prudent or effective to participate in rescues. Do they in fact serve to save the lives of the unborn? While in principle justified, perhaps in practice they are obstacles to saving the lives of the unborn. And this is how the argument is made. A sister group, Sidewalk Advocates for Life, which do great work, right, have put out a video arguing that the work of rescuing groups such as Red Rose Rescue is damaging to the pro-life movement. Now this is where I can sometimes be serviceable to my good friend Monica. When she faces something like that, she calls me up and she says, "Can you answer this?" No, she doesn't say it that way. That's how I hear it. No, but I really, in this
got it
role.
right, that's how he says it.
Pardon me?
You have it right, that's about the way
That's about the way she talks. And only because it's right and it's good and it's necessary and she knows I want to do it. And that's true. I have no higher aspirations in this world than to be Monica's minion, and she knows that. She's right back there. Okay. So there are three major concerns that the Sidewalk Advocates for Life had put forward. One, they claim that should rescuing groups continue their work, legal systems will push and push successfully to have buffer zones put in place around abortion mills. Not only for the abortion mills occupied by rescuers, but mills in the nearby area and beyond. And this would make it nearly impossible for sidewalk counselors to have access to those entering abortion mills, and thus many fewer lives would be saved. The argument is that even praying outside of abortion clinics or counseling would be made illegal if there is too many rescues that go on and are disruptive to the abortion business. They also argue that such rescues aren't ineffective for saving lives. That is, that you rarely get enough time to talk to the women. The abortion workers, if you're in the clinic talking to the women, they quickly move the women somewhere else, and you really don't get a chance to save lives. And abortion is just continuing. They are, number three, their third reason is they find the arrival of the police to be terribly upsetting to the women and the staff. And then they come to view the rescuers as fanatical lawbreakers and think that all pro-lifers are crazy. But those on the other hand who come day in and day out in all kinds of weather to sidewalk counsel make a powerful impression because of their perseverance. So they think that although they admire rescuers, they think rescuers in fact undermine the work of sidewalk counselors and eventually allow more abortions to take place. Now, these aren't baseless concerns. They're not on the face of it ridiculous. Their concerns deserve a response. And here I'm going to draw upon Monica's arguments. And my good friend, and I call her my ticket out of purgatory. Right? Monica has served the pro-life movement in nearly every possible capacity. She filmed the brief justification for the action of Red Rose Rescue even before the Sidewalk Advocacy Group produced its video. And I drew a lot upon her arguments, actually, to make arguments to defend her arguments. It's hard to imagine a more dedicated pro-lifer than Monica. She spent months in jail for her attempts to rescue the unborn, once herself the mother of a newborn. She regularly jeopardizes her livelihood, her job because of her actions and speeches. Her bosses don't like what she does. She has organized national conferences. She's done thousands of hours of sidewalk counseling. She has financially supported single mothers at a sacrificial level. Just yesterday, I'm in the car. She's like, excuse me, I have to call, I don't know, Sharonda. Call Sharonda. Sharonda, I understand you need help with paying some bills. Don't worry, I'll pay it. I can't today, but let's get together on Monday and I'll find a way to do it. The most assuring, loving voice to help a woman who had chosen not to get an abortion, was having trouble meeting the bills. She's rescued the corpses of aborted babies from dumpsters and kept them in her apartment or home until she could provide them with beautiful burials. She's convinced bishops and cardinals to perform funerals in Catholic seminaries for aborted babies. She's been responsible for the closing of several abortion bills by revealing their illegal activities. She wrote the book Abandoned, available back there, one of the finest books about the pro-life movement. Now, I say this not just so maybe I can convince her to drive more slowly on the way home, but because we can't take her views lightly, right? She's paid her dues, right? Her long-term commitment to the unborn and the sacrifices for them give her a special kind of knowledge that actually has a technical term in moral theology. That's what Thomas Aquinas calls connatural knowledge. The kind of knowledge that someone who's worked with horses for years has of horses, and those who have studied the qualities of wine have of wine. They might not be able to tell you the reasons why they're doing this treatment for a horse, but they've done it many times and they know it works. They might not be able to describe precisely what is perfect about this wine, but they know between different wines which one is much better. Even if these people cannot fully explain their judgments carry great weight. But in fact, she can fully explain her judgments in a voice and with a demeanor that powerfully convey her love for the unborn and their mothers and fathers. So I think we've got two things going with Monica. We've got her in her bones and in her heart and in her life justification for doing what she does, and also she can provide the arguments. Her most basic argument that it's necessary to enter abortion mills to attempt to rescue the lives of babies whose mothers are about to abort them. Just like you run into a burning building. If there's a baby trapped in there, you run in there to save that baby. Professor Miller insists that those babies deserve a chance to live. Sidewalk counseling is not effective in saving those lives of the women who are already in the abortion clinic. And in fact, the mills the rescuers have chosen to enter are not apt for sidewalk counseling most of the time. Standing outside won't do any good. You can't, the way they're set up. In attempted rescues, she and her fellow rescuers find they can have up to 15 minutes or so to talk to the women in a loving, gentle, and helpful fashion before the staff finds a way to get the clinic clients out of their reach. The fact is that rescuing has been effective. Rescuers have seen women leave the abortion mill, one hopes, never to come back. The Sidewalk Advocacy Group also raises the concern, as I mentioned, that now or later, such tactics may result in buffer zones being imposed around the clinics and jeopardize less invasive pro-life activity, such as prayer and persuasion outside of the clinic. Monica states that such has not happened, and that if and when it does, it will be right to reconsider the tactics. Let's not exempt ourselves from something before we're forbidden to do it. Let's not, anticipate what they might do to us and voluntarily remove ourselves from the situation. Why should we let the possibility of deterrence prevent us from saving lives? Sidewalk Advocacy also believes that the presence of the police at clinics who are provoked by the presence of the rescuers frightens women and creates an atmosphere that is not conducive to conversation with abortion-minded women that might dissuade them from having an abortion. As for the claim that the presence of the police will eventually show up at rescues is a serious negative, Monica postulates that whether then or later, it's not unlikely that these very same women and staff might come to realize what great sacrifices the rescuers are willing to make lives. You know that has happened. Some people have stopped abortion work because of the powerful witness of of people who oppose abortion. Indeed, let's see, I ask, how can people accept that pro-lifers really believe in the humanity and right to life of the unborn unless we are willing to make tremendous sacrifices for them? Certainly doing sidewalk counseling requires sacrifice, but it is in no way equivalent to risking or to doing time in jail. There has always been a lot of disagreement in the pro-life movement, and that is to be expected. Should we show graphic pictures of aborted babies at rallies during sidewalk counseling? Should we include mention of contraception in our literature? Should workers at pregnancy help centers mention God? Should we support compromise legislation? Concerning all these and other matters, people equally committed to stopping abortion have different views. But let us civilly share our views and respect the decisions of each other. In the end, I have to say, I believe it's the rescuers, those willing to go to jail. They are the ones who make the most powerful argument for the humanity of the unborn, for the wrongness of abortion. You have the argument that I'm willing to go to jail, sacrifice whatever I'm sacrificing, job, relationships and family, all sorts of things. That's more powerful than almost any argument that be given for humanity, the unborn, and the wrongness of abortion. Thank you.